Hello and welcome to another edition of what I hope, of course, is your favourite podcast. That is Recycle. Don't be a waster. In today's episode, we are going to cover, I suppose it's a news article that I read last week on Yahoo News. Maybe I'm the only person still looking at Yahoo, but this is actually quite an interesting article. It also touches on some of the stuff we've discussed in previous podcasts about, BPA and the potential impacts on human fertility that plastic may have or is suspected of having. Obviously, that is not scientific fact. We don't have the exact details to back that up, but clearly BPA and associated chemicals have significant suspected issues. So the one we're going to cover today is, I think it really emphasizes the old concept that the devil is in the detail, and that sometimes even a small thing that we just take for granted can have significant environmental and potentially human health issues also. So the article was in Yahoo News, published 27th of November, and the headline is "Calls for Major Change in Australia Over Little Known Receipt Detail. Alarming," in exclamation marks. And so, what is a receipt? A receipt is when you go into Coles, Woolworths or any other store, you purchase any item, and they give you basically a tax receipt that states the items you purchased and some other stuff, such as maybe promotions and that aspect. Obviously, people need these for getting returns, return policies, guarantees, warranties, and of course to submit to the tax man at the end of the year when you need to claim, if it's a tax deductible receipt or expense, you need to obviously have some evidence for it. The weird thing is the actual sheer quantity of this stuff is mind-boggling. And it is, I suppose we'll get into where this is coming from, but there was a study done by UTS, that's the University of Technology in Sydney, and backed by CSIRO, the government scientific body. And this was commissioned by an Aussie startup called Slyp, SLYP, who I will admit to not having heard of before. But this looked into the impact of paper receipts. Obviously, we'll get into why Slyp is looking into this in a minute, but so the sheer size of this stuff, it's supposed to produce almost 96,000 metric tons of carbon per annum, which is equivalent to having circa 21,000 cars on our roads, and generates the same amount of energy that could power 18,500 homes. So apparently we're receiving, through purchasing, 10.6 billion paper receipts each year, and nearly all are coated with this toxic BPA-style material, and that means they cannot be recycled. So fundamentally, they're just ending up in landfill. So we look at, some of the facts and figures about how much this is. Like, obviously, there's a hell of a lot of financial transactions occur in Australia or any country every year. And coming up to Christmas, after Black Friday, people are going to be purchasing more and more items, shopping. Through the sheer, some of the stats. The average length of a receipt is 27.85 centimetres long, which Australia alone means we would produce 2.95 million kilometres of them, meaning they could stretch from the Earth to the Moon a staggering 7.6 times. It is a lot of paper. Well, that is for sure. So this, obviously with this huge volume of paper, you can imagine that there's a lot of trees being chopped down, a lot of water going into production, a lot of energy into the actual machinery. And probably what I regard as one of the more serious aspects is this bisphenol A. This is called thermal paper, because obviously with this, you buy a product right now, it has to be printed in real time. You might wait 1 or 2 seconds, and then the receipt comes out. So this is regarded, according to this article, as being 1,000 times more toxic than BPA exposure on a plastic bottle. I'm assuming this is because it hasn't fully dried yet. Thermal paper is a special kind of fine paper that is coated with a chemical that changes colour when exposed to heat instead of using ink for printing, the report says. The health impacts of thermal paper receipts have also been called into question due to the possible effects on human hormones, with research suggesting links between BPA and increased blood pressure, fertility issues, type 2 diabetes, and even cardiovascular disease. So that is pretty severe, and we have got some retailers such as Coles, Woolworths and some other ones are stepping away from BPA coating, but what are they being replaced with? I know when we looked into this the last time, often what happens is they're replaced with a very, very similar coating that potentially has the same issues, but just hasn't been investigated yet. So this startup called Slip is looking to make this all electronic. So link into your, obviously a lot of people now are using apps on their telephone to pay. They're paying with credit cards. Cash is decreasing. And so it's a natural idea that this will, they can then just email you an automatic receipt and prevent then having to use these paper receipts. So I can certainly see the benefits of this. Obviously, it links into your banking stuff. You won't have a shoebox full of old paper, potentially toxic receipts. We'll avoid the whole printing stuff. So clearly, I can see a lot of positives. On a negative side, and I think we have to touch on this also, there are a lot of negatives that people are rightfully worried about in moving away to a cashless society. Obviously, let's be honest. Why are people fearful of moving to a cashless society? I suppose it takes away freedom. It takes away, being, invisible to the government. It means everything you do or said can be tracked and will be tracked, obviously, because when information is available, it will be utilized. So I suppose this to some extent feeds into that a little bit. So there will be some pushback for sure. There will be, some people won't be overly keen on this. I think, we need to find a better way of providing receipts that do not have this BPS stuff. I think for people willing to use this methodology of electronic methods, yes, 100%. But I think you probably need to also have that alternative, traditional paper or other methodology available also. So, I think with all things, we have to be sensible. We have to move, quickly, but move slowly enough to bring everybody with us and not make people feel that it's all one big, we're alienating people who want to, who, and let's be honest, a lot of people are not e-savvy still. There's a lot of older people who don't even use mobile telephones. So that's a demographic that will have to be factored in. But I think it's an interesting topic. I think it's something that really should be addressed. And I think, Slip, SLYP, it's probably a company that you may not hear about it in the future, but I think it's something that we will certainly see what they're working on. I'd imagine you will see this quite soon. I know when you go into JB Hi-Fi, I know they will text you a receipt. And I think this is going to become more and more prevalent. Probably auto link into your accounting software, so if that's what you're using, an MYOB or a Xero. So I think we'll see more and more of this stuff. Look, we'll leave it there today. I think it's a good idea that we're looking into every little aspect of stuff that's impacting our health, impacting the environment, and we're trying to address them all, one by one. So good luck to this. We'll leave it there. Recycle. Don't be a waster.